This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
Hi guys, I'm Carl Gruber, author of the new book True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship. Are you tired of being caught in the web of negativity that our ego-driven world mandates as reality? Say one positive thing and all you hear is, get real, get your head out of the clouds and prepare for the worst. Well, I'm here to tell you that negativity is not reality, and that the opposite is true. This is why I have written and published this book. In my new book, I show you how you can walk hand in hand and in alignment with the law of attraction and eternal universal spiritual truths, which will allow you to make all the positive, loving, happy, abundant, and healthy things you desire your reality. Find out how you can become a consistent co-creator of your life with the universe and get out of that negative spiral of lack, attack, and judgment. Get your copy today of my new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship by Carl Gruber, now available as an ebook and paperback on Amazon. Today, we celebrate the 80th episode of this podcast, World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment. Hi, I'm your host, Carl Gruber, and I can tell you with total certainty that over the previous 79 episodes, we have met and talked one-on-one with some of the world's greatest metaphysical and spiritual teachers and been uplifted and changed by the most amazing, enlightened, and ascended masters and teachers, too. As host and producer of this show, I promise you that we will keep on this enlightened and mind-expanding path for our future shows. So stay with us. And you can do that right now by clicking that subscriber button below, and make sure to click the link below to buy my brand new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship. A book that will show you how to create a rock-solid personal foundation for your life and become a consistent co-creator with the universe to manifest the life you truly want. Now, let's check in with my featured guest, V.C. Pitt. She is a breast cancer survivor and author of the upcoming book, My Twin Flame Journey of Separation, Surrender and Release, Unconditional Love Through Spiritual Lessons and Healing. It is her story of spiritual awakening, forgiveness, and healing. A serious fall led to her awakening on 11/11/17, and she identifies as a divine feminine twin flame who is an empathetic lightworker. Now, her new book will help you face childhood core wounds and adult traumas when all seems lost, learn how to drop the ego and pride and heal core wounds through unconditional love, and become aware of all types of karmic patterns and toxicity, including behaviors or people that need to be cleared from life. Develop the ability to surrender and release a twin flame connection to God or source. Wow, that is awesome. So welcome, VC. It is wonderful to have you here, and thank you for being on the show.
It's my pleasure, Carl. Thank you for having me.
Wow, this is just great. A brand new author, and we're going to talk about your book. But I have to say, I've looked at your website and the first chapter of your book. It sure sounds like you've had quite a ride from your early childhood to where you now find yourself in life. I mean, it sounds like you had a fairly rough, abusive growing up. And can you tell us about your journey?
When I was a little girl, my earliest memories include my father abusing my mother and my brother. I was fortunate to escape the actual physical abuse. However, I witnessed, heard my mother's cries. I knew he was hitting her, and I thought that was just normal. And it took me a few years to realize that everybody didn't live like that. When I would go to my friends' homes and spend the night, I often wished they were my family. And so these are things that go with you as childhood wounds into your adulthood.
Hmm. That's interesting too, because growing up, myself, my brother and I, and we never realized this till much later in life, we had no abuse physically or mentally. We just thought our lives was boring, and we thought, we didn't realize that so many people experience trauma and drama and abuse like that, physically and sexually growing up. And boy, it sure shapes your life.
It does. My earliest wounds are abandonment, rejection, and self-worth. And so these are things that it's really taken me into my 50s to be able to clear. I tried traditional routes with regular therapy, and that only goes so far, at least for me. And so I started looking at alternative means, alternative healing modalities to try to, you can't fix things, but to work through them.
Yeah, yeah. And so, with all this trauma and drama as a young person, you kind of carried that, from what I read so far, you kind of carried that into your early adulthood. How did you end up escaping that?
Well, I stayed in the masculine energies for well over 20 years. I didn't let people in. I had friends, very warm, outgoing, but I put borders up, walls up around me so that no one could try to hurt me. Because when I started in just working in the real world, I trusted everyone. I was very kind and gentle growing up. And so when I started work, I thought everybody was that way. And people hurt me. It really, I just was very gullible. And so that caused me to really put those borders up. And so when that happens, you block it off. You don't deal with it. I actually had a regular, I guess you would call it regular relationship with my father. We would be around each other. It was never anything deep. We didn't talk about the things that happened. He was actually in denial when my brother said something to him. He denied that some of the things happened. And luckily for me, my mother didn't try to turn me against my father. And so when my mother left, she left the state without telling me. My father, well, let me back up and say, when they decided to divorce, the only way he would give her the divorce was to get custody of us. And when you've been abused like she was for so long, she needed out of the marriage. And so when he told me, when I was 10, and he told me she left, I didn't believe him. And then, yeah, I found out it was true. And so luckily for me and my brother, that's all he wanted. He didn't want to have to pay child support. And so I was able him to move to Mississippi and live with my mother. And she married my stepfather in 1987, and he became the father I never had.
Oh.
So he helped me in many ways. He wasn't a perfect man in any shape, form, or fashion. However, he was the right father for me.
That's interesting because you mentioned earlier that you had to develop masculine traits in order to navigate through the crazy world, people disappointing you and hurting you. Isn't that kind of sad that the masculine trait represents growing a thick skin and becoming, almost impervious to emotions? And yeah.
It's something that nobody teaches this. It's what you gravitate towards. And so just in the last 4 years, I've learned about masculine energies, and I've been able to balance. And that's what we're really here for. To become a divine feminine or masculine, you need to balance the traits and no longer be a wounded masculine or feminine. And you can be a man as a divine feminine and vice versa. And so it's really, we're here to balance those traits within us. It's not easy. However, with healing, you can do that.
I have to say, growing up, I was definitely, macho, masculine. I mean, it was just the way we were trained in the time and the era I grew up. But I believe that we can, as men, tap into that divine feminine. I certainly have over the years, and I've opened up to my heart and my emotions and love and kindness, that type of thing. So it is something that men can develop. And two, you are evidence that a woman can blossom in her own divine feminine too.
Right. And for me, this was in my late 20s and early 30s. And I was established in my healthcare career. And I just would become defensive. I didn't take criticism well. And so I blocked myself off from being that receptive divine feminine. And however, my intuition, which has been with me since my teen years, it actually helped me to break out of it. So, but I suggest people look up online masculine and feminine traits and energies, because you may be a woman but be deeply in that masculine energy. Women are taught to go after, try to equal a man. And the thing about it is you can do it in a feminine way. And so that's a lot of what I have learned, and to no longer be in that wounded energy either way.
Now, of course, we're going to talk some about your brand new book here, but one other thing I would like to know, because again, what I've read about you, you are an entrepreneur. I believe you still own a business. So, and at one point you were like a super workaholic. What part did that play in you blossoming and opening up and overcoming all that?
Well, I desired to really get ahead, and I grew up very poor. And the jobs, because I didn't have a degree, I didn't make a lot of money. So when I worked hard, I worked very hard for very little. And so I actually got some further schooling. I received a certification, and my desire was to help physicians. And that intuition played into my business. My clairsentience is my strongest spiritual gift. And I was able to look at a medical claim, and I could determine just by eyeballing it, will it be paid or not? And so physicians hired me because they could own their own business and not be swallowed up by the larger entities. And so I also used to be a fraud investigator for Medicare, and it was a contracted company. And so I learned more about doing my job through that. And so that was a highly corporate experience. And so again, you have to go deep within your masculine energy. So when I started my business, I wanted it to be a good rapport. I respected the providers and they respected my opinions. And if I told them my gut is saying this, they listened because they had seen the end result.
Mm-hmm. So is clairsentience, is that a form of intuition?
It is what I call that gut feel. If you were traveling and you're like, I don't need to go down this road,
Right.
that's your gut talking to you.
Yeah.
So that has been with me. My grandmother was highly intuitive. And actually, she, one night when I was in middle school, woke up and knew something had happened to my brother, and he had a near fatal wreck.
Mm.
And so that intuition carried through to me, and I didn't realize how strongly till the most recent years. So yes, I was able to build my business. I got my LLC a few years ago. I've hired contractors that work with me, and I currently have 4 offices that I work with.
Wow. Well, at least you're not bored.
Oh no, sometimes it's a little crazy, but I'm used to it. But I used to work it for years. And I didn't know how to relax, and I worked every day. Christmas, I was late to getting to family gatherings because I was trying to get that last work done. And my mind was distracted. Let me get home and get this finished. So unfortunately, I put work ahead of my family many times, and I have much regret about that.
Well, let's find out too about this serious fall, this spill that you took on November 11th, 2017. What happened, and how did that lead to the start of your spiritual awakening?
Well, I didn't feel good that day. And when I don't feel good, I don't eat and drink a lot. And so I decided to get a shower, and I was in the shower and I got dizzy and I fell out of the shower, and I basically face planted on the tile floor. So I had bruising through here. I went to the emergency room. They couldn't find anything wrong. I followed up with several doctors, cardiologists, and then a specialty within cardiology. And basically, they determined I had a vasovagal response. So I basically was dehydrated and passed out.
Oh.
And so after that, things changed. So 1111 is a twin flame number. I didn't know that the fall was on a twin flame number for the night before a year went by. And so when that happened, about a couple of months after it, I started not being able to sleep well. And when you're working, some days 18 hours, you want your sleep. So I would go to bed, and then I started waking up and couldn't sleep. My mind was swimming. And I would wake up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be like, please just let me sleep because I've got to get up in just a few hours. And so that started happening more and more. And at this point, I had been married over 24 and a half years. And at that point, it wouldn't stop. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And so at that point, one day I was in the office, and it was like a light bulb went off, and like the switch was flipped. And after that, a person that had been involved with my business for a few years, and I had known for more than that, actually I was magnetically drawn to him, and I couldn't figure out why. And so I had my marriage, we had, I'd say half of the time was good marriage. He's a good person, but sometimes you drift apart. And essentially, my business did well. He wanted to start his own business, so I gave him the opportunity. Well, he quit his job and he didn't move forward, and everything was on me, the brunt of everything. He worked one day a week in an unrelated category of what he wanted to do. And I became very discontented. But back then, I couldn't vocalize my feelings. My throat chakra was blocked. And so being discontented, I didn't even talk about it to my mother or best friend. And finally, I started talking about it. And they're like, why can't you just say this? And I could not say it. I feared conflict. And so essentially, my twin flame is who I connected with, had an affair with, and it was beyond just an affair. It was a magnetic connection that consisted of telepathy. It's like you know them, you've known them all your life. When I first met him, there was something familiar about him that I couldn't put my finger on. And he also had told me that he felt like he had always known me. And so these connections, they're not that common. The term has become trendy, has become romanticized. And this is not about a romantic connection. It can be, but this is about soul growth. And it's not easy. Anybody who wants to be a twin flame or find their twin flame, this is not easy. And it about pulled me under. I was in many dark nights of the soul. There were times that I didn't think I was going to make it out the other side. And last year was when I truly started healing, and I started attending spiritual retreats. I've done ayahuasca twice, and I'm scheduled for a third time. And all of this with the Reiki healings and sound bath meditation, these are things that has allowed me to heal. So my hope is by sharing my story that it'll help inspire others to heal. And I'm being tasked to do this by the divine. When I started writing my story, I always joked. I said, I've been through enough. I'm going to write a story. Joked about it for a while. And it started to be, I need to do this. And I'm not a natural writer. And luckily, I have a really good editor and a lot of edits. And I've been told my writing style is very raw because I tell the truth, good, bad, or ugly. So.
Well, wow. You just covered a whole lot there. That's so obviously, folks, we've jumped into talking about VC's new book, My Twin Flame Journey of Separation, Surrender, and Release, Unconditional Love Through Spiritual Lessons and Healing. So I could tell that there's a lot of emotion there. I could hear and feel that emotion in your voice as you were just talking about this. I was interested because you're right. Twin flame seems to be a trendy type of term. So I went and kind of looked it up. And I mean, if we could delve a little bit more into, I found it interesting. I think a lot of people think it's your soulmate, more of a romantic type of thing. And like you said, it can be, but it doesn't have to be, right?
Right. So a soulmate connection is an easy, natural, romantic connection. They are usually, you've had different lifetimes with them. But a twin flame, these are multiple reincarnations. And my belief, I will explain it this way. I had read this one time and I wish I had who wrote it. But we all have what I call a soul quilt. And if you had 100 squares on this soul quilt, those 100 squares are you and others that are part of your reincarnated soul family. And those members of that soul family can be friends, family, even animals. However, a twin flame is one square torn in two. So they're the other half of your soul. And so my belief is through reincarnation that we have soul contracts, soul mission work. And so before I came to Earth, I picked my childhood core wounds, which is abandonment, rejection, and self-worth. And the twin, when he and I became involved, it was very, 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 it was magnetic. And at that point, I looked at it as a romantic connection. However, it is a vibrational frequency. You and that twin are on the same exact energetic frequency. And so the twin flame is to awaken you, to heal these wounds, to learn lessons. And so that's exactly what happened to me. And when the separation phase come, and you can read online different stages of this journey. And in the book, I put what I considered all the stages for me. And when the separation stage come, I felt like I couldn't breathe. It took me down. And there were days that I didn't think I was going to come out of it. Family and friends, close family and friends, loved and supported me. And I don't know where I would be without them. And so for me, it's something that if people say, well, I don't want to find my twin, it's not like that. So, well, I'm sorry. One thing I do want to add, recently, Megan Fox, actress, and Machine Gun Kelly, singer, they've actually come out as twin flames.
Really?
Yes. And his song, Twin Flame, has millions of hits on YouTube at the current time.
Interesting. Wow. Wow. So much of what you said there, that we come into this life, into this body with soul contracts and forgiveness lessons to learn. And much of this has been confirmed and talked about on this show with my past guests, ascended masters and teachers and all kinds of experts. And so, yes, it makes sense to me. Now, twin flame, can twin flames be the same gender?
Yes. And so it goes back to energies. And so, yes, they can be the same sex, different sex, and you cannot help who you're drawn to. And so if I had been a man, I would have been drawn to him just the same.
Okay, interesting. So again, all of this amazing journey you've been on and still are on, where does your spiritual awakening come into all this? I mean, what does spirituality actually mean to you?
For me, I had lived in tradition programming all my life. And when I had my fall, everything changed. I divorced at year 25 of my marriage. And everything that I was deep in the masculine energy. I was deep. I eat, breathed, and drank work. I couldn't quit. And I didn't have that soft edge anymore. And through this, when I was in many dark nights of the soul, and just didn't think I was going to make it out. I had to start finding ways for me to climb out of that hole. I did traditional therapy with a counselor, and it helps just some. And when the affair came out on his end, his wife borderline stalked me. I had to get a restraining order against her. I lived in fear, and the things that happened, I didn't know how I was going to get through all of this. I became a shell of who I had been. And when something like that, when someone does things like that to you, it can bring out fear like you wouldn't believe. And so I had to get that restraining order to feel safe in my life again and start taking baby steps to further my journey. And there's no manual to this. 2 steps forward, 1 step back many times. And so after the restraining order ended, I went to the beach to try to release the twin flame. I went to the beach, and a 3D Star of David, a Merkaba, formed over me at the beach. And so that was the first time I had seen sacred geometry. I didn't even know what those 2 words were. And so since then, I actually, about a week ago, saw my 4th sacred geometry symbol. And so all of this, it helped me know that I'm here and I'm being guided, directed, and protected. And so after seeing that at the beach, it was the turning point for me to start. Yes, I made many missteps along the way. I numbed out with alcohol, with marijuana, and it was very difficult because I didn't even like the taste of alcohol, but I needed to escape. And I didn't even realize that I was numbing out. I didn't look at it that way. And so there's only so much of that you can do. And one night, my best friend, I knew alcohol wasn't going to help me. And she came and stayed with me. That was one of the lowest periods I experienced. And so it became me researching, trying to figure this thing out. It is something that nobody wants to go through. However, since I'll say I was nominated for this journey, since going through this, I have healed. We're never fully healed, but it's been, and I stayed triggered for a very long time. However, my triggers are so few and far between now. Recently, and something that happened after the book was written, the person that harassed me, that I had the restraining order against about 2 to 3 months ago, she viewed my LinkedIn profile, and that sent me spiraling. The fear returned, and it took a month to 6 weeks for me to come back out of that. I wasn't going to do any photos or any video of myself. And I know I'm being tasked from Divine to tell this story, to share, to help others.
Wow, you have said a couple really, really cool things, interesting things here. First of all, I would like to investigate a little bit more about geometric, what was a geometric?
Sacred geometry.
Sacred geometry. Now, I've seen pictures. I've never personally seen it. And when you view a moment of sacred geometry, it's kind of a sign from all that is that you're taken care of, right?
For me, I was trying to figure all of this out. And for me, I believe it's something that we get activated with. So the first symbol I saw was a 3D Star of David, a Merkaba. Then last summer, I actually saw, I didn't know what a Fibonacci spiral was,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
a Nautilus spiral.
Mhm.
And so that actually, I was standing in my bedroom and it started forming in my bedroom mirror. I rubbed my eyes and I'm like, what is this? Am I really seeing this? And I did this and this. It was still there and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And there was like a double helix strand DNA. These are things that I don't have answers for, but I know that it's connected to the divine feminine. And so at ayahuasca, I saw the flower of
I
life.
wanted to ask about that. Yeah, ayahuasca, plant medicine ceremonies. I've got a number of friends around the world who have done it. I've never done it, but it supposedly opens you up to a whole new perspective on things.
It does. When I went, I had went through all the twin flame stages except releasing attachment to outcome. I went specifically to try to release attachment to outcome. And when I went to a place called Soul Quest in Orlando. And I was scared. It was totally outside my comfort zone. And it was a sacred feminine retreat. There were less than 30 of us. I didn't know what to expect. And so we sat around the Maloka, the little lodge, and we all verbalized our intent. And so that was my first intent. And so when I drank the plant medicine, I can only say what my experience, if I had not healed, I would have been in the pits of hell. One of the ceremonies, one of the girls was screaming, "Make it stop, make it stop, make it stop." And I heard stories of women who had been molested, who had had traumas. And if I had not done the healing that I have, I would have been in a hard spot. And my experience for me, I was catapulted into space. I saw religious symbols. I saw colors. I knew at that point that I had been part of the universe, being originating from planets, energy. And so I come out, after you're coming out, I call it waddling outside of the lodge, and you sit down, and I'm ready to share my experience, and I feel on fire with knowledge, and sitting there, almost every one of them except 2 or 3 were like me. They were having deep difficulties, and so that was the nighttime ceremony. And the daytime ceremony, I was in what I perceived as the Garden of Eden.
Wow.
And it was so spiritual for me. I was next to the tree of knowledge, and I was trying to ask questions to try to figure this journey out. And for me, I was upside down on the cross. I received the message, all is forgiven. And it was just such a spiritual experience. And it's not for everyone. However, I believe that a lot of people are coming out that they have gone through this experience to share it with people.
Wow. Wow. This is amazing. Again, like I said, I've never done ayahuasca, but it should be done, don't just go do it on your own. You should be with like a shaman who
Yes.
knows how to do the ceremony so that it is a correct experience for you. Very interesting. So we are talking with VC Pitt, who is the author of a brand new book, My Twin Flame Journey of Separation, Surrender, and Release, Unconditional Love and Spiritual Lessons of Healing. And so, interesting. I only read the first chapter. I'm going to have to trade you the PDF of my new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction. You send me yours. And in your promotional material, as far as your book, it says, "Are you ready to drop your ego and pride and heal core wounds through unconditional love?" So that's where your journey has taken you, to a place of unconditional love.
It truly has. For me, I always love deeply. My heart is big and pure. And I stayed because of that masculine energy and keeping everyone out. I found self-worth through my job. And I took pride in the work I did and being who I was, because I never excelled at a lot when I was younger. I was just an average student, and I did well sometimes to get out of class, to get through class. And I didn't go to college. So I always didn't feel up to par. One of my best friends was valedictorian in the class that I graduated in. So I always wanted to excel. And so once I figured out I could be really good at my job, that's what I became about. And so through this journey, it breaks you down. Mm-hmm. And so I'm so far from prideful now, and I'm grateful for that. And my ego, it's just it's a lot more warm. And part of this, if you don't have forgiveness along this journey, you can't do this. Mm-hmm. You've got to break, to me, your ego and pride down. And you have to have forgiveness to feel that purity, that unconditional love for others. And so I walk most every morning, about 3.5 miles. And what I notice is people that I encounter, they're so focused. They don't want to look at you. They're caught in their world. And the thing about it is, what I realized, once I gravitated back to more of who I was as a child, and this journey is about returning to that inner child. And once I did that, my heart was more open. It took, I had a blocked heart chakra, and it took a lot of Reiki to allow me, a lot of sound healings or sound bath, meditation. It took a lot for me to work through this and allow my vulnerability to come out again. And that's part of it too. We have to be vulnerable. And not everybody can do that, or they think they can't. Mm-hmm. And so that's what my story, I have been through a lot. We all have. Not everybody will share or talk about it. And so what happened to me a couple of years ago, my mother, my stepfather, I had talked about him. He had a heart attack and had problems for several months. And he passed in May of 2020. And my mother, she couldn't be by herself anymore, so she was coming to live with me. And she had 2 severe falls with bruising that made mine look like nothing. Mm-hmm. And mine was pretty bad. She had several health issues. And when she fell, she had to go to rehab. And she had another fall. Once she went to the hospital after the fall, she had another one. So the bruising was compiled and worse. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. I had started a conservatorship on her. They wanted to think it was early dementia, and a spinal tap was inconclusive. And so I was distraught because my mother was my world. And so she ended up, they changed one medication and she came out of it, and I witnessed a miracle. She had such a good attitude about going to rehab and getting stronger. So she went back and she came home with me in July 2 years ago. And she brought COVID home from the nursing home. And she brought it home and I contracted it. She didn't make it and I did. And so what I learned was I trusted, I begged God that when I thought she was dying the first time, she had to go by ER. And I'm sorry, go by ambulance to the ER. And when she went that night, I thought I will never see her again. And they wouldn't let you in the ER then because that was COVID is still prevalent and rampant, but I consider that the bad COVID. And so she basically, I thought I wouldn't see her again. And I begged God, I said, please don't take her from me. Please give me more time. And she came out of it, and I was so grateful and blessed. And then after she had COVID and I had to manage her care from my bed. I was running fever 102 to 104, my pulse ox 92 and 93. It was all I could do to get up and down my steps. I lost 10 pounds in just a few days. And so I went outside. I would stay so cold from the fever. And I went outside on my patio, and the heat was in July heat in the South will warm you up. And so I sat out there and I basically would talk with God. And I'm like, please, if I'm meant to live, I want to live. If not, I accept my fate. And so I'm trying to manage her care, run my business, and take care of myself. And what I started noticing out in the patio, I started seeing these spots and flecks. They were silver in the sky. And they would flit around. And I was like, what is this? And it wasn't just one or two. Everywhere I looked, they were at. And what I've realized through that is my angel team.
Yeah.
And I see them still today. And so once my mother, she got really tired. They tried different medicines. She just wasn't improving and was sent to ICU or CCU. And when they called me and she was pulling at her BiPAP machine, I knew she was tired. And through my stepfather's death, I knew what her wishes were. And I was her medical POA, power of attorney. And I had to make the decision to let her go. And I told God, I said, I'm ready. I knew she had been through a lot, but it took, and I think God had to let me see that where I begged, I was ready to release her. And so I love my mother, but it was the right thing to do. They wanted to do something called a transcatheter procedure. And she didn't have any heart issues. And when I refused it, the cardiologist was like, I don't think it's really her heart anyway. And I thought, why was this even suggested to me? Yeah. So she passed, and I could have spiraled. And I found my grandmother's strength. And I didn't lie in my grief. And I ended up, and I have a fear of public speaking. And I actually did her celebration of life service. And
Nice.
I tried to honor her the best I could. And right after that, I I started thinking about I needed to forgive. I didn't realize fully that forgiveness had to be done. And what happened for me, do you remember the song? And as a former DJ, I know you will, Heart of the Matter, Don Henley.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That is a song about forgiveness. I started hearing that song all the time. It haunted me. And during that same time period, I actually saw a YouTube video being suggested to me, and it was about a Holocaust survivor, Eva Moses Core, I think is how you say her name. And this video, it she was subjected to these experiments by Dr. Joseph Mengele.
Oh, yeah. Mangala, yeah.
Or I'm sorry, I don't always say names right. And so this doctor, she was a twin with her sister, and I believe they were identical twins. But they were twins, so they would do these experiments. And all of her family died, and she was able to forgive that doctor for what he did. And I started thinking, if she can forgive, how can I not forgive all these things that would be considered minor to what she went through? And it really weighed heavily on my heart, and I was supposed to see that. And at that point, I had started making a list out of 12 people that injured me emotionally. And that list grew to 34 people.
Mm,
And I went through a 3-month period of forgiveness.
great.
And so I can honestly say that changed my heart. And I hope that people, when they hear this, that it will open their heart to possibly forgive things you didn't think you could forgive. So after I forgave, I was going along still struggling with that release and attachment to outcome. And I have very lucid, vivid dreams. And so back last year in March, I actually had a dream to where my father came to me. I had never dreamed of my father. And I knew that he was going to die. And I was being given an opportunity. Now, one thing I haven't said is a few years ago, I cut the toxicity of my brother and father out of my life. They would often put me in the middle of things. It caused me to excoriate, scratch my skin raw. And it was just, I couldn't do it. And I just basically exited. I didn't tell them anything. I pulled away from it. And that was part of my healing. We are not supposed to accept toxicity. Now, people, they may not be able to do like I did and cut people out of their lives, but for me, I had to. So my father, when he died, that it took me a whole day to feel, to allow myself to feel that. And when he died, I was going to have to go to the funeral out of obligation. Well, I heard my higher self. It dropped into my thoughts. What do you want to do? I didn't want to go to the funeral. And I made the decision to not go to my father's funeral. And it wasn't him, it's just his corpse.
Right.
And so for me, I still have no regrets over going to that. I didn't hate him or anything. But for me, it would have served no purpose, because a eulogy is just going to sing that person's praises. And I just couldn't do it. He had been an alcoholic, womanizing, gambling father that was abusive. And he was an alcoholic for many years. And he had his own childhood wounds and traumas. And for me to be able to walk away, it wouldn't have served any purpose. My father and it was very basic. We didn't talk deeply about things. And so my brother, he is a little older than me. He took a different path than me, and that's talked about in the book. He became a heavy drug user. He has actually been arrested for drug possession and meth trafficking. And so because of my job, I can't be involved with that. So I can't let him back in my life. And my brother always has been the victim and blamed everyone else. And so I put in the book that I often question how the same gene pool can produce totally different siblings, but it does.
Yeah.
And so after my father died, that's when I found retreats. I've been to 4 spiritual women's retreats, and like I said, twice to ayahuasca, going back September 30th to uncover the next stage and phase. When I went to ayahuasca in March, and let me say this. So after my parents died, I had to settle my mother's estate, and my mother cut a step sibling and my brother out of it. So my brother blamed me for that, but I'm a lot stronger and I don't let him get to me like I used to. Mm-hmm. So after all of this happened, I started, really focusing on the book. I started writing it, laid the first draft chapter in February of last year. And so I have a wonderful editor, because I'm not a natural writer, and a lot of revisions. And so for me, the book, writing it was, a lot of people say, cathartic. And
catharsis, cathartic, absolutely. I was actually going to mention that,
And for me, I couldn't have talked to you a year ago because I would have cried through a lot of the interview. So I've come a long way. And so last fall, when I was really getting heavy into the writing, I, of course, had neglected my health through for a while. Even working for doctors, we're the worst ones, the healthcare workers. We tend to neglect things. So for me, my doctor, she said, you need to go get you a mammogram. And I thought, I really don't want to do this. And so I booked it in December. Well, there's no breast cancer. I didn't see a need for it. And so when I went, they wanted me to come back. I've had that happen, no big deal. And they wanted to do a biopsy. And when they did that, they placed titanium clips inside of me, just in case they ever needed to locate it. So I was like a little apprehensive about that. The very next day, one of the doctors I work for, I had actually had an appointment that morning, and I went home, and she called me herself, and she said, I need you to come back by this evening to discuss your test results. Working in healthcare as I do, no news is good news. And I intuitively knew you have breast cancer. So I went in, and yes, I received that result. And that was on December 29th this past year. So I don't wait around. If something's put upon me, I'm going to act. So I had an appointment with a breast surgeon a week after my diagnosis. I had surgery 2 weeks after that. When I had went in, she said my lymph was congested, so I was worried it had spread to my lymph nodes. And I went in, had surgery in January, and it came back as a stage 2A clinical, B pathological. And it had not spread to my lymph nodes. They removed 5 lymph nodes. It was 2.1 centimeters by 1.9, so almost an inch. And basically, where it didn't spread to the lymph, I was given a choice between a mastectomy or a lumpectomy with radiation. And I thought, thank God I have a choice. So I selected a lumpectomy with radiation. And one of the biggest challenges for me was to have what's called a savvy catheter inserted. So I had what's called partial irradiation. And so they inserted this catheter that looks like the end of a mixer into me. And I went through surgery just fine. And that was the hardest, one of the hardest things I've ever had to do was to have that done, because you're awake when they basically open you up and insert that catheter. And so I went through radiation twice a day for 5 days. And they basically did that as a protection. Hopefully it won't come back. So my whole journey for that was 77 days.
Wow.
And on New Year's Day, I faced my mortality. And I said, God, if this is my fate, I accept it. But if not, I want to live. And I promised myself, if you get through this, you're going to live. You're going to live your life. And that's exactly what I've been doing this year. I've gotten out of my comfort zone. I did a Mud Girls run, and it was. I'm not one to get dirty or get muddy, and it took 3 shampooings to get the mud out of my hair. And so I was very blessed that I didn't have to have chemotherapy and the after effects. Most people thought I would look really sick when they saw me, and I looked sick for a bit, but I bounced back pretty quickly too.
You know, this has just been amazing. We're going to wind up here in just a little bit, but we've been talking to VC Pitt, and I honor you for sharing such a deeply personal story, which you have done in your brand new book, again, My Twin Flame Journey of Separation, Surrender, and Release, Unconditional Love Through Spiritual Lessons and Healing. Now, that book, the print version, is not even available till September 9th. I believe your ebook is available. How can they get that?
Well, my website is mytfjourney.com, and they can read the prologue and the first chapter. And they can order it through Amazon. Actually, today I found out that it's available for Kindle. It will be available for retailers through Ingram. And so we actually are ahead of time. And so the official release date is September 9th. However, it will be available about in a week. If anybody would like to order, my website, not everything's on there yet. I'm technically challenged, but have a good webmaster. And so he's still adding things. However, there's going to be photos added that from ayahuasca, from my spiritual retreats, where I ground every morning, releasing everything that I need to transmute it into love and light for the collective.
Well, this is amazing. You and I are both newly published authors. It's quite a journey doing that. But again, no tears today, but I could tell they weren't far behind you. You're definitely, it's okay to wear your emotions on your cuff. I don't see anything wrong with that. So, VC Pitt, a new author, thank you so for being right here on World Awakenings, a fast track to enlightenment. What an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Carl.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.